The crystalline spires of the Galactic Council's chamber rose, like frozen lightning against the purple-hued sky of Centauri Prime. Emily Henderson stood at the base of the main archway, her simple blue dress a stark contrast to the shimmering biotech robes of the alien diplomats flowing past her. At 16, she should have been preparing for her junior prom back in Montana. Instead, she was about to address the most powerful gathering of species in the known universe. Miss Henderson. Ambassador Crix's translucent form shimmered next to her, his crystalline structure catching the light of 3 different suns. The inner chamber is ready for your presentation. Emily nodded, her honey blonde hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She clutched her tablet closer, its screen displaying complex mathematical equations that would have given college professors headaches. To her, they were as natural as breathing. More importantly, they were the key to understanding the true language of the galaxy. The inner chamber was a perfect sphere, its walls alive with swirling calculations and quantum probabilities. 217 species were represented here, some so ancient they remembered the birth of their first son. Their collective gaze fell upon the human girl, a mix of dismissal and barely concealed contempt. The human representative may address the council. The voice of the high speaker reverberated through the chamber, a symphony of harmonics that carried subtle undertones of amusement. To them, this was little more than a diplomatic courtesy. Let the young species feel important by letting their child play at politics. Emily stepped forward, her boots making a soft click against the quantum blast floor. She didn't start with words. Instead, her fingers danced across her tablet, and the air around her erupted with mathematical symbols. They weren't the simple equations the council expected from a primitive species. These were hyperdimensional calculations that described the very fabric of space-time. The amusement in the chamber shifted to confusion, then to something closer to fear. Distinguished members of the council, Emily's voice carried clear and strong. You've known us as the young species, the new children of the galaxy. You've watched our stumbling steps into space, our crude attempts at faster-than-light travel, our primitive understanding of quantum mechanics. She paused, letting her words sink in. But mathematics is the true universal language, and it tells a different story. The equations around her shifted, forming patterns that made several council members lean forward in their gravity fields. She was speaking their sacred mathematical language, but with variations they'd never seen. Improvements that shouldn't have been possible from a species so young. Humanity doesn't just use mathematics, Emily continued, her green eyes reflecting the swirling equations. We see through it. Your historical archives. They're written in the quantum fluctuations between stars. Your trade routes, mapped in the gravitational songs of black holes. Every species here has a mathematical signature, and they all tell stories. The high speaker's form flickered, a sign of agitation. You claim much, young one, perhaps more than is wise. Emily's smile never wavered. I don't claim, high speaker. I prove. With a final touch on her tablet, the equations transformed, revealing patterns that had been hidden in plain sight throughout the chamber. Patterns that the council had believed only they could see. The silence that fell was absolute. In that moment, the council realized they weren't looking at a child playing with numbers. They were looking at something far more dangerous, a human who could read the universe's own language. In the highest tier of the chamber, hidden from most eyes, several ancient forms began to pulse with colors that hadn't been seen in millennia. Colors that spoke of fear, of decisions made in dark places, of problems that needed to be solved. Emily Henderson, the girl from Montana, had just changed the galaxy forever. She just didn't know she had less than 24 hours to live. The private archives of the Galactic Council were not meant for human eyes. Buried beneath the main chamber, The quantum-locked vault held secrets that had remained hidden for millions of years. Yet here was Emily Henderson, her tablet interfacing with systems that should have been far beyond her understanding. "Show me," she whispered to the dark. Numbers danced in the air around her, each sequence a story of extinction, each equation a carefully orchestrated genocide. The Tyrith, a species that had discovered quantum engineering too quickly. Their sun had unexpectedly gone nova. The Krelth, masters of biological technology. Their entire species had succumbed to a natural plague. Emily's hands trembled as she decoded more recent archives. The pattern was clear. Any species that developed too quickly, that threatened to upset the Council's careful balance of power, simply disappeared. Her tablet chimed softly. A message from home. Her father's weather-worn face appeared. A backdrop of Montana mountains behind him. "Everything all right, pumpkin. Your mother's making your favorite apple pie for when you get back." Emily forced a smile, already computing the quantum encryption she'd need. "Dad, remember when you taught me to solve for Xu?" Her voice was steady, but her eyes spoke volumes. Understanding flickered across his face. This was their code, their private mathematical language. "Always check your variables, honey. All of them." The connection ended, and Emily's fingers flew across her tablet. She had minutes, maybe less. The mathematical sequence she composed wasn't just numbers. It was everything she'd found, everything she'd learned, encoded in a language only Earth would understand. The air behind her shimmered. Impressive, high-speaker Vrax's harmonic voice filled the chamber. "We wondered how long it would take a human to find their way here." Other council members materialized around her, their forms casting strange shadows in the archive's light. Emily straightened, pressing the final command on her tablet. "You've been murdering species for millions of years." "We've been preserving balance," another council member corrected. "Young species are like children playing with antimatter. They don't understand the consequences of their actions." "And you're the perfect judges." Emily's voice dripped with contempt. "Playing gods with entire civilizations. We are the shepherds of galaxy." Vrax's form pulsed with ancient colors. "When a wolf threatens the flock, it must be removed." Emily laughed then, a sound that made several council members ripple with unease. "You still don't understand what you're looking at, do you? I'm not the wolf." Her tablet completed its transmission. "I'm the warning." The high speaker's next words were almost gentle. "No, child. You're the example." The air began to thin. Emily's ears popped as the pressure dropped. They were venting the chamber to space, but doing it slowly, making it look like a tragic malfunction. As her vision began to dim, Emily Henderson, the girl from Montana, smiled. Her last message was racing through quantum space, encoded in a mathematical sequence that would change everything. Not a cry for help. She was beyond that now. Not a warning. It was too late for that. It was a promise. The council watched dispassionately as her body floated in the zero gravity of the depressurized chamber. "Regrettable," one member noted, "but necessary. Send the official notice to Earth," Vrax commanded. "A tragic accident. Full investigation to follow. Our deepest condolences." None of them noticed that the archive's quantum matrix had changed ever so slightly. In her final moments, Emily had left something behind. A mathematical time bomb buried in their most sacred equations. They had just murdered a human child. Soon, they would learn why that was the worst mistake in their long, long history. 3 days after Emily Henderson's death, the Galactic Council received Earth's official response. Nothing. No diplomatic protests. No threats. No demands for investigation. Just a mass recall of every human representative throughout known space. The silence was so complete that it made the Ancient Ones uncomfortable, a feat not achieved in 10,000 years. High Speaker Vrax stood in the council chamber, watching the last human transport vanish into jump space. "Report," he commanded. A junior member's form shimmered into existence. "The humans are singing, High Speaker. Singing. Every human world, every colony, every station. They're all broadcasting the same mathematical sequence. Our analysts say it's the last transmission from the Henderson girl, but they can't decode it." In his private chambers, Vrax studied the transmission. The mathematics were unlike anything he'd seen in his 3,000 years. Not a message, but something else. Something that made his crystalline form resonate with an emotion he hadn't felt since his species was young. Fear. On Earth, in a ranch house in Montana, John Henderson sat at his kitchen table. His weather-worn hands traced the rim of a coffee cup that had long gone cold. Around him, military leaders and scientists waited in respectful silence. "She knew," he said finally. "My little girl figured it all out." General Sarah Martinez leaned forward. "The sequence she sent, Mr. Henderson. We need to know if you can read it." John's laugh was hollow. "Read it? She wrote it for me. For us." He pulled out an old notebook, its pages filled with equations he taught Emily when she was just a child. "This isn't just data about the Council's crimes. It's a key." Across human space, the song continued. To alien ears, it was mathematical nonsense. But to humanity, it was a wake-up call, a battle hymn written in the language of the universe itself. In underground facilities that no alien sensor had ever detected, quantum computers spun up. Ships that had been hidden in dimensional pockets began to power their systems. Weapons that defied the Council's understanding of physics were armed. The Council's spies reported strange movements. Human industrial centers were going dark, but their power signatures were actually increasing. Military bases appeared abandoned, yet orbital scans showed complex quantum fluctuations where nothing should exist. In the council chamber, a senior analyst's report caused widespread agitation. "The Henderson sequence. It's changing the archives." "Impossible," Vrax declared. "The archives are quantum-locked. Yet they're being rewritten." Somehow, she planted a program that's revealing things. Things we hidden even from ourselves. On the Montana ranch, John Henderson looked at the assembled leaders of humanity. "You all know what they did to my daughter, what they've done to countless others." He stood, and for a moment, the simple rancher facade fell away. "Emily gave us everything we need. The Council's security codes, their hidden weaknesses, their darkest secrets." General Martinez's eyes hardened. "What are your orders, Director Henderson?" The man who had hidden Earth's most advanced quantum research facility under a Montana ranch for 20 years looked at a photo of his daughter, Emily at age 7, explaining her first quantum equation on their old kitchen whiteboard. No declarations of war, no warnings, no mercy. His voice was soft, but it carried the weight of a species' fury. "Emily showed us their true nature. Now we show them ours." Throughout human space, the song changed. The mathematics shifted, and hidden fleets began to move. The Council had murdered a human child. Humanity's response would be written in the death of stars. The first sign that something was wrong came when the quantum research station in the Proxima Centauri system simply vanished. One moment, the Council's most advanced monitoring post was there. The next, it existed only in memory. No debris, no energy signature, no distress call. Just nothing. High Speaker Vrax called an emergency session, his crystalline form vibrating with frequencies that made junior members flinch. "Explain," he demanded. The strategic analysis chamber erupted with holographic displays. A young species representative, their gas-based form swirling in agitation, began the report. The human female's last equation, it wasn't just data. It was a key to something they'd hidden in plain sight. The displays shifted, showing what appeared to be normal space around Earth and its colonies. Then the filter changed, and the council chamber fell silent. Wrapped in layers of quantum probability, hidden in dimensional pockets that shouldn't have been possible, was the largest fleet anyone had seen in a million years. Under the Montana Ranch, Director John Henderson stood in a control center that made the council's chambers look primitive. Holographic displays showed fleets moving through spaces between spaces, ships that operated on principles the council had deemed impossible. "Status report," he commanded, his voice carrying the weight of a father's grief and a species' rage. General Martinez's voice came through quantum-entangled channels. "Operation Dragon's Tooth is active. The Council's quantum network is being rewritten as we speak. Emily's program is, it's beautiful, sir. She built backdoors into their most secure systems years ago." John allowed himself a moment of pride through the pain. His daughter hadn't just been playing with mathematics in the council chambers. She'd been setting the stage for this moment. In council space, reality began to fray. Ships that had been hidden in plain sight for decades revealed themselves. They didn't move like normal vessels. They danced through space-time itself, leaving probability waves in their wake. Each one was a masterpiece of engineering that violated everything the council thought they knew about physics. "Impossible," one of the ancient ones whispered. "Their technology was primitive. We monitored everything." A hologram appeared in the center of the council chamber, John Henderson's face, looking every bit the simple rancher, but his eyes holding something that made even the oldest members feel young and afraid. "You watched what we wanted you to watch." His voice was conversational, almost friendly. "Those clumsy ships, those basic AI systems, window dressing. My daughter showed us your true nature, so now let me show you ours." The hologram expanded, showing ships that bent light around them like living things, weapons that didn't destroy matter, but simply rewrote its probability of existing. "Humanity hasn't been playing catch-up," John continued. "We've been preparing. Every ship you see was built in spaces you can't perceive, powered by mathematics your kind never bothered to explore. Because unlike you, we never assumed we were the smartest things in the universe." The council watched in horror as their quantum networks began to dissolve, rewritten by programs Emily Henderson had hidden years ago. Programs that had been waiting for one specific mathematical key, the one she'd sent in her final moments. "You murdered my little girl." John's voice grew soft. "The one who saw through all your lies, who found all your hidden crimes. She could have been your future. Instead, she became your doom." The hologram faded, replaced by a single image. Emily Henderson's last school photo, her smile bright and true. Then the dragons that humanity had built in secret began to hunt. The Aegis defense platform was the pride of the Council's military might. For 10,000 years, it had stood guard over the primary gateway to core space, its quantum shields considered impenetrable. It took exactly 3 minutes to cease existing. Not destroyed. That would have been crude. Instead, the mathematics of its existence were simply revised. Where once the mightiest fortress in known space had stood, now only stars shone. In the council chamber, the displays showed similar reports from across their territory. Strategic points that had stood for millennia were being erased with surgical precision. "How are they targeting our quantum-shielded installations?" A council member's gas form swirled in distress. The calculations required would be already solved. High Speaker Vrax interrupted, his crystalline form dulled with the first signs of age in centuries. "By a 16-year-old human girl." Aboard the human flagship, Mathematical Certainty, General Martinez watched the strategic display with cold satisfaction. The ships under her command didn't fire traditional weapons. They rewrote probability itself. "Target Beta 7 is transitioning," Her XO reported. Quantum signature. Erased. Clean removal. No collateral effects. Martinez nodded. Every target had been chosen with explicit purpose. Each one a facility that had played some role in the Council's long history of species elimination. Emily's final message had given them everything. Locations, access codes, quantum frequencies. In his Montana command center, John Henderson watched the same data streams. His daughter's legacy was being written across the stars. Not in fire and destruction, but in the elegant mathematics of unmaking. A communication request flashed on his screen. The Council, finally breaking their silence. Director Henderson, High Speaker Vrax's voice carried none of its usual harmonics. This display of force is unnecessary. We can negotiate. John studied the monster who'd ordered his daughter's death. Negotiate? He asked softly, like Emily tried to negotiate when she offered you a chance to confess your crimes and change. She was a threat to galactic stability. She was a child. For the first time, John's voice cracked. A brilliant, beautiful child who saw through your lies and offered you redemption. And you murdered her for it. On the strategic display, another Council installation simply ceased to be. In its place, a hologram appeared, Emily's last school photo, with a single word beneath it. Pray. We don't want your surrender, John continued, his voice steady again. We don't want your apologies. What we want. He pressed a command, and across Council space, reality began to shift. The Council members watched in horror as their most sacred mathematical proofs, the very foundation of their power, began to unravel. Emily's program wasn't just erasing their military might. It was undoing the calculations they used to murder countless species. Impossible, Vrax whispered. These are our most protected sequences. Protected by mathematics my daughter mastered before her first kiss, John cut in. Before her first dance. Before all the things you stole from her. The strategic display showed more installations vanishing, each disappearing with a precision that made traditional warfare look barbaric. You built your empire on murder. General Martinez's voice joined the channel. Killed species that might have brought wonders to the galaxy. Snuffed out countless billions because they didn't fit your perfect order. And then, John's voice was winter. You killed my little girl. The last image the Council saw before the channel closed was Emily's equation, the one that had started it all. But now, they could read it, really read it. It wasn't a weapon. It was a sentence, and humanity had come to carry it out. The Nix delegation was the first to break ranks. Their quantum crystal representatives materialized in Earth's orbital defense ring, their traditional blue luminescence dimmed in submission. We were there, their speaker whispered, light patterns shifting in shame. When the Ancient Ones murdered the stars of the Krelf, when they poisoned the seas of the Meridian, we watched. We said nothing. In the Montana Command Center, John Henderson studied the aliens who had come to confess. Behind him, holographic displays showed more Council systems going dark as Emily's mathematics continued their inexorable work. And when they murdered my daughter, the Nix speaker's crystal form dimmed further. I was in the chamber. Her last words. She knew what was coming, yet she smiled. Smiled and said, mathematics always reveals the truth. General Martinez's hologram appeared, her expression hard. They're not the only ones breaking away. The Seventh Confluence has declared independence from the Council. The hegemony of the Outer Rim is mobilizing their fleets against their former masters. On the main strategic display, the Council's territory was dissolving like sugar in rain, not just from human attacks, but from within. Every species that had ever suffered under their rule, every civilization that had been forced to watch their neighbors die, was rising up. High Speaker Vrax's desperate broadcast echoed across all frequencies. This is madness. We maintained order. We preserved the galaxy's balance. The response came not from Earth, but from the hegemony's grand fleet. You murdered children. Their admiral's voice thundered. You killed whole species for the crime of growing too quick, learning too much. No more. In a hidden chamber beneath the Council's archives, the oldest members gathered in emergency session. Their forms, ancient beyond reckoning, flickered with colors of terror not seen since the first stars burned. The human girl's equation, one ancient whispered. It didn't just reveal our secrets, it proved we were wrong. Wrong about everything. John Henderson watched as more delegations arrived in Earth space, not to surrender, but to join, species after species, bringing their own stories of Council atrocities, their own lists of murdered worlds. Emily's last message continued to spread, a mathematical proof that showed a different way, not control through fear, but growth through cooperation, not power through destruction, but strength through diversity. Sir, Martins called, her hologram showing a rare smile. The quantum archives are fully decoded. Everything they ever hid, every crime they committed, it's all coming out. Emily's program. It's like it has a mind of its own. John touched the photo of his daughter on his desktop. She always did love solving puzzles. Even at the end, she was teaching them something new. The next speaker approached, crystal form brightening slightly. We have located the private chamber where the order was given. Where they? Where she? We can take you there. In Council space, more systems declared independence by the hour. The mathematics that had kept the Council's power structure hidden were being undone, replaced by new equations that showed the true balance of the galaxy. They're running, Martins reported, watching the strategic display. The inner Council members are trying to flee to their emergency bunkers. John Henderson stood, his simple rancher's appearance at odds with the power he wielded. Let them run. Emily's mathematics are in every system, every network. There's nowhere in this galaxy where they can hide from what they've done. The next speaker's crystal chimed softly. The young ones ask, what will humanity do with the Council's power once it falls? John's answer was simple. We'll do what Emily would have done. We'll make it better. And across the stars, her equation continued to shine, teaching a galaxy how to grow without fear. Operation Sleeping Beauty began at exactly 3:47 a.m. Earth Standard Time, the same moment Emily Henderson had drawn her last breath 1 month earlier. The Council's emergency bunkers were among the most secure locations in the galaxy, hidden in quantum pocket dimensions, protected by mathematics so complex they were considered unbreakable. Emily had solved them during her first week at the Council. Quantum lock disengaging. General Martinez's voice was calm as she watched the operation unfold. Emily's keys are working perfectly. They never even knew she'd found their sanctuaries. The extraction teams moved like ghosts through unraveled reality. These weren't standard military units. Each member had been chosen because they'd lost someone to the Council's balance. Parents of murdered children, children of vanished species, survivors who'd watched their worlds burn. High-speaker Vrax never even saw them coming. One moment he was secure in his quantum-shielded chamber. The next, he was standing in a simple room with white walls and a single window showing the Montana sky. Welcome to Earth. John Henderson's voice was quiet. He sat at a simple metal table, a coffee cup in his weather-worn hands. I believe you know why you're here. Around the galaxy, similar scenes played out. 7 other Council members, each one present for Emily's murder, each one found in their impregnable hiding places. The trials were broadcast across every known frequency, in every language, mathematical and otherwise. Not in a grand chamber, but in a regular Earth courtroom in Montana. The kind Emily would have visited on her school's field trips. This is unprecedented, Vrax protested, his crystalline form dulled with fear. We are the council. We stand above normal laws. No one stands above justice. The judge, a woman from a small town in Idaho, cut him off. Not even those who've played God for millions of years. The evidence was presented with mathematical precision. Every species the council had murdered, every civilization they'd erased, every child they'd sacrificed for their balance. Emily's final program had found it all. But it was the recording of her last moments that broke them. "I forgive you," her voice, clear despite the failing air, echoed through the courtroom. "But I hope you learned from this. The universe isn't meant to be controlled. It's meant to grow." In the gallery, representatives from 100 species watched. Some were ancient races who'd been too afraid to challenge the council. Others were young civilizations who'd nearly been balanced out of existence. The verdict was never in doubt. But the sentence surprised everyone. Death would be too easy. John Henderson addressed the court. And it's not what Emily would have wanted. She believed in growth, in learning. So here's their sentence. They'll live. They'll watch as the galaxy grows without their control, as young species reach for the stars without fear. The former council members were confined not to prisons, but to regular communities on Earth and other human worlds, places where they'd have to watch children play, see families grow, experience the messy, beautiful reality of life they'd tried so hard to control. "Your quarters will have a view of a school," John told Vrax as the former high speaker was led away. "Every day, you'll see children learning, growing, reaching for the stars. And you'll remember the one you murdered for daring to be brilliant." In the courtroom's empty gallery, hours after the verdict, General Martinez found John standing at the window, watching the sunset. "The younger species are already forming a new council," she reported softly. "One based on Emily's mathematical principles. Growth through cooperation. Strength through diversity." She would have loved that. John's voice was thick with pride and pain. She always said the best equations were the ones that helped everyone grow. Above them, through the window, the first stars of evening began to shine. Somewhere out there, new species were taking their first steps into space, no longer afraid of being balanced out of existence. Emily Henderson's legacy would be written not in the death of stars, but in the birth of new ones. 5 years after the trials, the galaxy had changed in ways even Emily Henderson might not have imagined. The new Galactic Assembly convened in a building that seemed to defy physics, its architecture a living expression of the mathematical principles she'd left behind. The main chamber was a perfect sphere, just like the old councils, but with one crucial difference. Here, every species sat at the same level. John Henderson stood at the podium, his rancher's clothing standing out among the varied forms of 100 species representatives. Behind him, a hologram of Emily smiled down at the assembly, her equations dancing in the air around her image. "5 years ago, we thought this was about vengeance," he began. "We were wrong. My daughter left us something far more important than revenge. She left us a future." The display behind him shifted, showing new worlds where once suppressed species now reached for the stars. Young civilizations making their first contact, without fear of being balanced out of existence. The Henderson Protocol, General Martinez, now Ambassador Martinez, continued from her seat. "That's what they're calling it. Every new species we discover is protected, nurtured. Their unique perspectives are celebrated, not feared." In the gallery, former High Speaker Vrax sat with his guards, his once brilliant crystalline form now transparent with age. Every week, as part of his sentence, he taught advanced mathematics to human children. And every week, he learned something new from them. "We were so certain," he addressed the assembly when called upon, "so sure that control was the only way. But in her last moments, that human child showed us a greater truth. The universe doesn't need controllers. It needs teachers. The holographic displays showed the statistics. Scientific advancement had accelerated beyond all previous models. Species that would have been eliminated under the old council were now contributing breakthroughs in physics, medicine, and dimensional mathematics. Emily's final equation wasn't just a key to the council's secrets. A young Nyx scientist explained, their crystal form glowing with excitement. It was a proof that diversity itself is mathematically optimal. The more different perspectives we have, the stronger we all become. In the center of the chamber, a new memorial took shape. A quantum crystal structure that showed Emily Henderson at different ages, playing with her first calculator, solving complex equations on her family's kitchen whiteboard, standing proud at the old council chamber. "We don't call it the council chamber anymore," John said, his hand touching the memorial's base. "This is the Henderson Hall of Discovery, where every species, young or old, comes to share what they've learned, where no question is forbidden, and no answer is final." The Assembly's first major vote was unanimous. The establishment of the Emily Henderson Scholarship for Cross-Species Mathematical Innovation. Every year, young minds from across the galaxy would come together, breaking down the barriers between their different ways of seeing the universe. As the session ended, John found himself in the memorial garden outside. Each plant there had been chosen because its growth pattern followed the mathematical sequences Emily had loved. In the center, a simple plaque bore her last words. "The universe isn't meant to be controlled. It's meant to grow." Ambassador Martinez joined him, watching the triple sunset. She would have loved this, you know. All these different species learning from each other, growing together. "She does love it," John corrected gently. "Her mathematics are in everything we build now. Every new discovery, every bridge between species. She's still teaching us." Above them, the stars shone with new light. Somewhere out there, a young species was taking its first steps into space, looking up at the same stars and wondering what they'd find. Thanks to Emily Henderson, they'd find friends, teachers, and a galaxy ready to help them grow. The universe had a new equation now, and it was beautiful.